Azula tells her uncle she does not need him. She is 14 years old. She has just returned from conquering the largest city in the world. She is the most powerful firebender of her generation. She can generate lightning, which is a skill only 3 people in the entire Fire Nation can perform. She is, by every external measure, the most successful person her age in the known world. And she is saying, with a small tight smile, that she does not need anyone. Iroh looks at her from his cell and does not argue. He sees what she does not see. He sees the gap between what she says and what she is, because her voice is a little too even. Her smile is a little too fixed. Her hands, resting at her sides, are rigid in a way that a truly relaxed person's hands are not. She is performing the not needing, and the performance is itself the need. Both of those things cannot be true at the same time, and yet the show holds them in frame together, and asks you to understand that this is what it looks like when a 14-year-old girl has been raised by a father who only loves her when she is useful, and when even the success of her most useful act has not bought her the love she has been trying to earn. What this video is about is not Azula the villain. Many analyses treat Azula as the show's secondary antagonist, a dark reflection of Zuko, a prodigy turned bad. Those analyses are not wrong, but they miss what the show is actually doing with her. What the show is actually doing with her is showing you, in excruciating detail, the psychology of a child who has been constructed by her parents as a tool, a weapon, a means to an end, and who is discovering, as she approaches the age when most children begin to individuate from their parents, that she does not have a self underneath the construction, that the girl she was asked to become is the only girl she has, and that the girl is a mask, and underneath the mask there is nothing, or almost nothing, or only the terrified fragments of a child who was never allowed to exist. This is not a villain's arc, this is a tragedy. And the show treats it as a tragedy, carefully, across 3 seasons, culminating in one of the most disturbing sequences in animated television history. Welcome to Ember. This one is hard. Get comfortable. Let us get into it. Azula is introduced at the very end of the first season, in a brief scene that establishes her as a new threat. She appears in the opening of the second season, confronting her father about the failure of the Fire Nation's northern invasion. She is composed. She is articulate. She speaks to her father, the Fire Lord, with a kind of precise deference that suggests she has rehearsed every syllable. She is, from her first moment, presented as a child who has been trained for a specific kind of performance. She is not relaxed around her father. She is never relaxed around her father. Nobody who is loved by their father has to speak to him that way. The way she speaks to Ozai tells you, in her first scene, that something about her upbringing has been seriously wrong. Ozai assigns her to capture Zuko and Iroh, who have been declared traitors. She accepts the mission. She leaves. And the show, for the next several episodes, uses her pursuit of Zuko as a plot engine. But underneath the plot, the show is giving you pieces of her. It is showing you, slowly, who she is and how she became that person. The Avatar State, which aired on March 17th, 2006, is her first major episode. She arrives in a grand Fire Nation procession to retrieve her brother and her uncle. Her welcome to them is a trap. She tells Zuko and Iroh that their father has restored their honour and wants them home. Zuko, desperate to believe this, nearly falls for it. Iroh, wary, presses her, and eventually Azula's deception unravels. The truth is that Ozai wants them dead, or at least captured and punished. Azula has been sent to lure them onto her ship and then imprison them. The deception is elaborate, carefully constructed, and almost works. It shows you, in her first full episode, that she is a master of manipulation. She lies with a face that looks like it is telling the truth. She can simulate warmth, concern, family feeling, without any of those things being genuinely present. She is, at 14, already an accomplished psychological operator. This is significant, because most 14-year-olds are not accomplished psychological operators. Most 14-year-olds have not yet learned that lying requires the mastery of micro-expressions, that deception at her level requires years of practice. Azula has practiced. The question the show wants you to start asking is, Where did she practice? And the answer, when you piece it together across the series, is that she practiced on her family. She practiced on her brother, on her mother, on her uncle, on her father, on the servants of the palace. She grew up in a household where manipulation was the primary mode of communication, and she became good at it because she had to become good at it to survive. The skill is not a gift. The skill is a scar. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The show gives us flashbacks to Azula's childhood in later episodes, most notably in Zuko Alone, which aired on May 12, 2006. These flashbacks are brief but devastatingly specific. We see Azula as a child, probably 8 or 9, already precocious in her firebending. We see her tormenting her brother with small cruelties. We see her interrupting adult conversations, trying to claim her father's attention. We see her mother, Ursa, looking at her with something that is not love but is not quite the opposite of love either. It is concern. It is discomfort. It is the expression of a parent who has noticed that something is wrong with her child and who does not know how to fix it, and who has started, perhaps without meaning to protect the other child from the concerning one. This is the wound at the centre of Azula's life. Her mother, she believes, thinks she is a monster. The show confirms this in a devastating scene in the 3rd season, where Azula, in a moment of strain, says out loud that her mother thought she was a monster and thought Zuko was the good child. She says this with a kind of bitter laugh. She is presenting it as something she has accepted, something she has processed, something that no longer bothers her. But the fact that she is saying it at all, spontaneously, in a moment when she is under no external pressure to say it, tells you that it has been on her mind for years. That the belief that her mother preferred Zuko has been eating at her since she was small. That she has built her entire identity around compensating for a loss she was too young to name when it first happened. Think about what that actually means for a child. A child who believes her mother does not love her, and whose mother is one of the 2 adults responsible for knowing who she is, grows up without the internal scaffolding that most children develop. The child does not have a stable sense of her own worth, because the person whose job it is to give her that sense has been withholding. The child does not have a stable sense of being loved, because the person whose job it is to love her has been, in the child's perception, giving the love to someone else. The child has to find another way to generate worth, and Azula's father, Ozai, is standing right there, offering a very specific alternative. He will love her, he will praise her, he will reward her, but only if she performs, only if she excels, only if she is useful. This is the exchange Azula makes, probably very young, before she has words for it, before she knows that what she is doing is making an exchange. She accepts Ozai's conditional love because Ursa's unconditional love is, or seems to be, unavailable. She trades herself for praise. She becomes, by increments, the child who will be praised, the child who will be useful, the child who will make her father proud. And once she has made the trade cannot be undone. Because the alternative, accepting that her mother might have loved her after all, would require her to face the possibility that she has spent her life in pursuit of something she did not need to pursue, that her father's praise was never worth what she gave for it, that she has become a monster in the service of winning the love of a man who was never capable of loving her in the way she needed to be loved. Azula cannot face this, so she doubles down on the trade. The younger she is, the more natural this feels. By the time she is 8, she is effectively already the Azula we meet at 14, just in miniature. The pattern has been set. Each year, she hardens it further. She becomes more skilled, more useful, more feared, more admired by her father, more distant from her mother, more cruel to her brother, more isolated from her own possible better self. And she does not know she is doing any of this. She just knows she is winning. The show is careful to show you that Azula, for most of her life, believes she is winning. She does not feel unhappy. She does not feel broken. She feels like the child who has figured out how things work. Zuko is the loser in her frame. Zuko is the one who is still trying to get their father's love by the wrong methods, with the wrong priorities, with too much empathy and too much hesitation. Azula sees through the family dynamics with a clarity that Zuko does not have. She understands that Ozai loves strength, loves efficiency, loves the absence of weakness, and she has configured herself accordingly. From her position inside the configuration, she looks smart. She looks successful. She looks like she has solved the problem. What she does not see, what the show makes you see from the outside, is that the configuration is not a solution. The configuration is a kind of slow self-annihilation. She is year by year becoming less of a person and more of a tool. And tools do not have inner lives. Tools do not have friends they can rely on. Tools do not have futures that extend past their current use. She is being used up, and she does not know it because she has never known any other state of being. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us talk about Mai and Ty Lee. They are the two girls closest to Azula. They have been her friends since early childhood, as the show establishes through flashbacks and through the dynamics we see between them. Mai is a noblewoman's daughter. Ty Lee is one of 7 identical sisters from an acrobatic family. Azula has known both of them since before any of them could remember, and the relationship Azula has with them is, in the first and second seasons, what passes for her emotional life. But the relationship is, on close examination, not a friendship. It is a command structure. Azula gives orders, Mai and Ty Lee execute them. When Azula decides they are going on a mission, they go. When Azula decides they are going to chase Zuko, they chase him. When Azula decides they are going to conquer Ba Sing Se, they help conquer it. There is loyalty there and there is affection, but there is no equality. Mai and Ty Lee do not disagree with Azula. They do not offer alternative ideas. They do not tell her when she is being cruel. They are, functionally, subordinates in a hierarchy she has established. And Azula reads this as friendship. She genuinely believes that Mai and Ty Lee are her friends. She has never experienced an actual friendship, so she has no comparison. She believes that this is what friendship is. You have people who are loyal to you, who do what you tell them, who are amused by your jokes, who stand next to you in battles, who accept your leadership. And if they do these things, they are your friends. This is the model she has built. And it is a model that works for her, for years. Because Mai and Ty Lee are both children of Fire Nation aristocracy who have been trained to defer to authority, and because Azula's authority is legitimate within the system they have all been raised inside. The model breaks in the 3rd season. It breaks at a specific moment in an episode called The Boiling Rock Part 2, which aired on July 16, 2008. Azula has captured Zuko and Sokka during a prison escape. She is in a position of absolute power over them. Mai, who is Zuko's former girlfriend, and who has been pining for him for most of the 3rd season, arrives. Azula expects Mai to help her recapture Zuko. Mai refuses. Mai, instead, physically defends Zuko. She uses her weapons to help him escape, and Ty Lee, seeing Azula about to attack Mai, Chi blocks Azula, which is Ty Lee's specialty, a martial art that briefly disables bending. Azula falls to the ground. The prisoners escape, and Mai and Ty Lee, both of them have betrayed Azula to her face. This is the moment when Azula's world starts to come apart, because it is the moment when the model she has been operating under reveals itself to be wrong. Mai and Ty Lee were not her subordinates. They were not her followers. They were her friends. And friends, when asked to do things that are unacceptable to them, will refuse. Friends will prioritize their own values over your commands. Friends will, in extreme cases, fight you if you try to harm people they love. Azula did not know this. She thought she had their absolute loyalty. She was wrong. And the wrongness is not a small thing. The wrongness is the structural failure of her entire worldview. If Mai and Ty Lee were not absolutely loyal, then her father might not be absolutely loyal either. If the people she thought she owned were not actually hers, then what does she own? What is she in control of? What is her life? Mai's line in this scene is one of the most important lines in Azula's arc. Mai says to Azula that she loves Zuko more than she fears Azula. This sentence is devastating for Azula to hear, because it contains, embedded in it, the assumption that the whole relationship between Azula and Mai has been structured around fear. Mai is telling her that she has been, all along, a friend who was afraid of her, not a friend who loved her, a friend who feared her. And the difference is everything. Azula has been thinking she was loved. She was actually feared. The discovery is so foundational, so cutting, that the rest of her psyche cannot absorb it. It starts from this moment to fall apart. Ty Lee's chai blocking is the physical punctuation of this discovery. Azula is rendered helpless, unable to bend, unable to fight back, unable to do anything. And the two girls she trusted most in the world have done this to her. They are standing over her, or running away from her, or looking at her with apology, but also with resolve. And Azula is on the floor. The fall is physical, but the fall is also psychological. This is the moment when her psychological centre of gravity collapses. She does not yet know it, but her mind has just been broken, and the breaking will spread outward from this scene over the next several episodes until she cannot function at all. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The third season tracks Azula's unravelling with precision, not in a rush, in small increments. She returns to the Fire Nation capital, humiliated by the escape but still powerful. She continues her duties. She advises her father. She is, on the surface, functional, but underneath, she is losing her grip on things in ways that accumulate. The show gives us a scene in the episode The Beach, which aired on October the 19th, 2007, where Azula and Mai and Ty Lee and Zuko are sent on a vacation together to Ember Island. This is before Mai and Ty Lee betray her, but the tensions are already present. Azula, on vacation, does not know how to vacation. She does not know how to relax. She does not know how to flirt. She does not know how to be a teenage girl. She has a scene in which she tries to flirt with a boy her age, and it is painful to watch because she has clearly never flirted before. She follows a script she has read somewhere. She says the right words, more or less. But the performance is hollow. The boy recognizes that something is off. He leaves her. And Azula, who has never been rejected by anyone because she has never let anyone get close enough to reject her, is briefly devastated. The episode culminates in a group therapy session, essentially, where the four main Fire Nation teens, in a bonfire on the beach, take turns saying what has been bothering them. Zuko says he hates himself. Mai says she does not know who she is. Ty Lee says she is one of 7 identical sisters who was never seen as an individual. And Azula, when it is her turn, says that her mother thought she was a monster. The show does not linger on the admission. Azula says it casually, with the same bitter laugh she will use later to discuss other wounds. She adds, "I know she was right, but she still should not have said it." This is the entire confession of her life, delivered in a single sentence on a beach to 3 people who barely hear it. The others do not know how to respond. Ty Lee offers a shallow comfort that doesn't land. Mai says nothing. Zuko looks uncomfortable but does not address the admission. The scene moves on, and Azula, having made the confession, closes it back up. She will not speak of it again. It will not come up in any direct way, in any subsequent scene. But the confession has happened. The audience has heard it. And from this moment on, every time we see Azula, we are supposed to remember what she said. That her mother thought she was a monster, and that she thinks her mother was right. This is the wound the entire 3rd season is built around for her. Everything that follows, every small crack in her composure, every moment of paranoia, every outburst, every hallucination, flows from this wound. She has spent her life being the monster her mother accused her of being, because she concluded, at some level, that she had no choice. That her mother's preference was set, that her father's preference was conditional on her being useful, that her only path was to become exactly the thing her mother hated, in exchange for being exactly the thing her father required. She has been paying for this exchange in small installments of self for years, and the bill has come due. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The betrayal at the Boiling Rock is the first major installment. She returns to the Fire Nation without Mai and Ty Lee. She is alone. She continues her duties. She advises her father on the plan to use Sozin's comet to burn the Earth Kingdom to the ground. She plays the part of the useful daughter. She attends the meetings. She assents to his plans. And in the background, her paranoia is growing. Small things start to seem off to her. Servants are moving strangely. Generals are whispering. The palace, which was once her domain, now feels hostile. She cannot tell who is loyal anymore, because she has just learned that loyalty is not what she thought it was. The paranoia escalates in the episode Sozin's Comet Part 1, which aired on July 19, 2008. Ozai, preparing to leave for the final burning of the Earth Kingdom, crowns Azula Fire Lord. But the crowning is a trick. He renames himself Phoenix King, a title he has invented for the occasion, which places him above the Fire Lord in the Fire Nation's hierarchy. Azula is Fire Lord in name only. She will rule the palace while he rules the world. He is leaving her behind. He is taking the important battle for himself. Azula, hearing this, does not protest. She bows, she accepts the title. But the expression the show gives her, in the half second before she masters her face, tells you everything. She has just realised that her entire life has been leading to this moment, and this moment is a sidelining. Her father, whom she has been trying to please for 14 years, does not consider her worthy of the comet battle. He considers her worthy of staying home, and the thing she has been trying to earn, the position of being the Fire Nation's chosen successor, turns out to be a consolation prize. She has been playing to win a trophy that her father has quietly taken off the table and replaced with a smaller trophy that she is welcome to have if she wants it. This is the moment when her worldview's final supporting beam breaks. She has already lost Mai and Ty Lee. She has now, in a sense, lost her father. Not literally. He is still alive. He is still, technically, proud of her. But the specific form of his love, the form she had been banking her life on, turns out to have been a fantasy. He does not love her the way she wanted to be loved. He loves her as a tool, and the tool today is being left on a shelf. The shelf is the palace. She will wait there. She will be, in his absence, the token Fire Lord. And when he returns from burning the world, he will take whatever is left and rule over it. And she will continue to be what she has always been, which is his useful daughter, to be used as needed. Azula breaks from this point onward. The breaking accelerates. She begins to see plots against her where none exist. She banishes servants for perceived offences that are actually the servants doing their jobs correctly. She banishes her governors, her generals, her daily agents. By the time the comet arrives, she has dismissed most of the people who would have been her support staff for the upcoming battle. She is alone in the palace. She is sleeping poorly. She is eating erratically. She is losing weight. She is losing her hair because she has started cutting it herself, badly, in fits. The sequence of her unravelling across the first episode of the final 4-part finale is one of the most difficult sequences in the show to watch. She is 14 years old. She is a child. And the show is showing you, without glamour, without comic relief, without softening, what it looks like when a child like this finally breaks. Her face is gaunt. Her eyes are red. Her voice is unsteady. Her movements are jerky. She cannot control her own expressions. She cannot control her own thoughts. The mirror scene is the climax of this unravelling. She sits in front of a mirror. She is brushing her hair, which is uneven from her own bad cuts. She is talking to herself, and then she sees her mother in the mirror, or she thinks she does. Or her mind produces the image of her mother to answer a question she has been asking herself for years. Her mother, in the mirror, tells her that she loves her, that she has always loved her, that she is sorry for whatever Azula might have thought. And Azula, instead of accepting this consolation, throws the hairbrush at the mirror and shatters it. Because the consolation is intolerable. If her mother loved her, then everything Azula has done her life has been unnecessary. She's been becoming a monster for nothing. The sacrifice has been for nothing. The years of distortion have been for nothing. And she cannot accept this. She shatters the mirror to make the impossible voice stop. This is one of the most psychologically precise scenes in the show. Because the scene is telling you that Azula's problem is not that she is evil. Her problem is that she has built her entire self around a specific reading of her childhood. And the reading might be wrong, and if the reading is wrong, she has nothing to stand on. The hallucination of her mother offering love is not a threat from outside. It is a threat from inside. It is her own mind, in a moment of vulnerability, generating the possibility that she might have been loved all along. And Azula cannot receive this possibility, because receiving it would require her to restart her life from scratch. She cannot afford to do that. She has too much invested. She would rather break the mirror. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The Agni Kai against Zuko is the final external event of Azula's arc. By the time of the duel, she is visibly unstable. Her hair has been cut badly, her crown is askew, her makeup is uneven, her eyes are darting. She laughs at inappropriate moments. She talks to herself. The court is empty of her previously dismissed servants. She is, for the first time in her life, actually alone. And she is about to fight a duel with her brother whom she has spent her whole life considering a lesser person. Zuko arrives for the duel with Katara. He approaches Azula, who is standing in front of the palace, as the Agni Kai begins. The duel is, in the show's framing, a final confrontation between the two siblings. But it is also, implicitly, a comparison between two children who were raised by the same parents and who took opposite paths out of the same conditions. Zuko rejected Ozai. Azula embraced him. Zuko found Iroh. Azula pushed Iroh away. Zuko learned, slowly and painfully, how to be a person. Azula learned, efficiently and brutally, how to be a weapon. They are, in this moment, the two possible endings of the household they both grew up in, and they are fighting each other to determine which ending is the final one. The duel itself is not long. Azula's firebending is still powerful, but it is erratic. She is not operating at her full capacity. She is aiming wrong. She is telegraphing. She is making mistakes a 13-year-old should not make, let alone the Fire Nation's most acclaimed prodigy. Zuko, on the other hand, has been learning patience. He has been learning to not attack from anger. His firebending is steadier. He is outfighting her, slowly but clearly, throughout the duel. And then the show gives Azula her final moment of characteristic Azula. She aims lightning at Katara, who is watching from the side, because she has realised that she cannot beat Zuko conventionally, and that the only thing that will hurt Zuko more than defeating him is hurting someone he loves. This is, ironically, the final demonstration of the kind of psychological isekai that makes her so dangerous. She understands her brother better than he understands himself. She knows with perfect clarity that Katara is the one he would sacrifice himself for. And she attacks Katara, not because she expects to win, but because she expects to break Zuko through the pain of watching. Zuko jumps in front of the lightning. He takes the lightning to his own chest. He falls, and Azula for a moment has achieved what she wanted. Zuko is down, Zuko is dying, possibly. She has hurt him. She has won in the only way she could figure out how to win. But the winning does not feel like winning. Because Zuko, in taking the lightning, has demonstrated that his love for Katara is more powerful than any strategy Azula could have employed. And the demonstration is, to Azula, a final proof that her worldview was wrong. Her worldview was that power and fear were the operating forces of reality. Zuko has just shown her that love is also an operating force, and that it operates at a scale her worldview did not account for. He has exposed the incompleteness of her understanding. And the exposure is, in a sense, a defeat more fundamental than any she could have suffered in battle. Katara finishes the duel. She uses water to freeze Azula, chains her to a metal grate, and defeats her. The fight is over, but Azula's response is not what a defeated warrior's response would be. She does not spit. She does not curse. She does not threaten revenge. She screams. She weeps. She thrashes against the chains. She is, in this moment, not a warrior. She is a small girl having a complete breakdown in front of her brother and a stranger, in the courtyard of the palace she grew up in. On the day the war her father started has finally ended without her. The scream is the scream of a child. The weeping is the weeping of a child. And the show wants you to see, at this exact moment, that she has been a child this entire time. Not a villain, a child, a very damaged child, who has just run out of the strength to keep pretending to be anything else. The final shot of Azula in the show is this scream. Close on her face, mascara running, hair uneven, mouth open, tears flooding her cheeks. The show holds on this image. It does not cut away quickly. It lets you see her. It wants you to see her, because it has been telling you for 3 seasons that this is who she actually is, underneath all the competence. And now, in her worst moments, the mask is gone. And what is left is just a teenage girl who has been broken by circumstances she did not choose. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us talk about what the show is doing, philosophically, with Azula's arc. Because the arc is doing something more ambitious than most villain arcs attempt. The show is arguing that villainy is not, in most cases, a moral failure of the villain. Villainy is usually a structural failure of the villain's environment. Azula did not choose to be Azula. She was made. She was made by a specific father, a specific mother, a specific household, a specific ideology, a specific set of experiences. And the version of her that we meet in the show is the result of those specific inputs. If any of the inputs had been different, the output would have been different. If Ursa had been more present, or less afraid, or more skilled at parenting a difficult child, Azula might have grown up differently. If Ozai had been absent, or less manipulative, or less capable of offering conditional love, Azula might have grown up differently. If the Fire Nation had not been at war, or had been at war differently, or had been ideologically different, Azula might have grown up differently. She is not responsible, in a deep sense, for who she has become. She is a product of factors she did not control. This is a radical argument for a children's show to make, because most villains in children's fiction are presented as making choices. They are bad because they have chosen to be bad. The moral lesson is that making good choices produces good people, and making bad choices produces bad people. Azula's arc rejects this lesson. It says that choices are made within constraints, and that if the constraints are bad enough, the choices will necessarily be bad. that you cannot evaluate a person's choices without understanding the field on which those choices are made. That Azula's cruelty is not separable from her childhood. That to judge her without understanding her is to misunderstand what cruelty is. This does not mean Azula bears no responsibility. The show does not let her off the hook entirely. She does make choices. She chooses repeatedly to deceive, to dominate, to harm. She chooses to serve her father's imperial ambitions. She chooses to conquer Ba Sing Se. She chooses to aim lightning at Katara. These are her choices. She is the one making them. But the show is asking you to hold the responsibility and the sympathy at the same time, to understand that she is culpable for what she does, and also to understand that she was shaped into the person who would do those things by forces she could not have resisted at the age she was shaped. This is a mature ethical position. It is the position of adult moral reasoning. Children, when they first encounter villains, want the villains to be simple. They want the villains to be bad by nature, fixable only by being defeated or killed. Adults, if they think about it, recognize that villains are mostly made, that the people who do terrible things are usually the products of terrible circumstances, that breaking the cycle of harm requires understanding where the harm came from. And the show is, by giving Azula this specific arc, inviting its young audience to move from the childish model of morality to the adult model, to understand that the world is more complicated than hero and villain, that people are shaped, that compassion, even for people who have done terrible things, is not weakness, it is accuracy. Zuko's arc and Azula's arc are two halves of the same lesson. Zuko is the sibling who was given a key to escape. Iroh was his key, and Zuko eventually used the key. Azula is the sibling who was not given a key. Nobody was there to offer her the alternative path. Ursa might have been, but Ursa was gone before Azula had developed enough to accept what Ursa was offering. Iroh might have been, but Azula, by the time she was old enough to choose between her father's influence and her uncle's, had already been shaped enough that she dismissed Iroh as weak and irrelevant. There was no door out for Azula, or the door was there, and she could not see it. Either way, she did not walk through, and the consequence is the courtyard scene, the screaming, the shattering. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us think about what this means for anyone watching the show who has ever known a person like Azula. Because most people, if they have lived long enough, have known someone with a similar psychological profile, someone who is overachieving, rigid, manipulative, emotionally cold, obsessed with their parents' approval, the overachiever who cannot relax, the sibling who has to be the best, the colleague who cannot tolerate not being in control. These people exist in every social environment. They are common, and the show is asking you to understand them with more depth than you might have otherwise given them. Because the show is arguing that these people are, in most cases, carrying an Azula-shaped wound. They have been constructed by some combination of parental pressure and personality into people who cannot rest, cannot fail, cannot be vulnerable, cannot accept unconditional love because they have never experienced any. Their apparent strength is a defense. Their competence is a compensation. Their cruelty, when it appears, is a consequence of the exhaustion of constantly being perfect. And if you know someone like this in your life, the show is telling you they need something they have not been given. They need the version of love that Iroh gave Zuko. They need someone who can see through their performance and offer them permission to stop. This does not mean you, as someone who knows an Azula, have to be the Iroh. That is not a fair request. Some people are too damaged to be saved by any one other person. Azula herself in the show is not saved by anyone. She ends the show in chains, and she spends much of the subsequent comics in a mental institution. Her healing, what little of it happens, is partial, low, and largely outside the frame of the main narrative. The show is honest about this. It does not promise that all Azula-like people can be saved. Some of them cannot. Some of them have been hurt too deeply, for too long, at too young an age to recover within the lifetime that they have been given. But the show is asking for something else from you, if you know someone like this. It is asking for understanding, for recognition that the difficult person you know has been made difficult by their history, for the humility to refrain from judgment even when the person is hurting you, for the patience to see, through their performance of capability, the child that was broken before you ever met them. This is a lot to ask. The show asks it anyway, because the show believes that seeing people this way is the only way out of the cycles of harm that produce more Azulas. The parents who produce Azulas were, in many cases, themselves made Azula-like by their own parents. The harm moves forward through generations. It only stops when somebody, somewhere, decides to see through the performance and offer something different. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is another layer to Azula's psychology that the show explores more quietly, which is the way she experiences power. Azula has access to, and mastery of, one of the most exclusive forms of firebending in the world. She can generate lightning. Only 3 named characters in the show can do this: Iroh, Ozai, and Azula. The ability requires a specific emotional state, which Iroh describes as a perfect separation of the mind, a kind of detachment from normal human feeling. To generate lightning, you have to be briefly not a normal human. You have to access a version of yourself that is not attached to anything, not afraid of anything, not wanting anything. You have to be pure cold. This is significant because it maps onto Azula's general way of being. She is, most of the time, in a state that is partially detached. She has trained herself to suppress her emotional reactions. She has trained herself not to want things in the way most teenage girls want things. She has trained herself not to need connection, not to need affection, not to need reassurance. And this training, which makes her exceptional at lightning, also makes her psychologically brittle. The detachment that allows the lightning is also the detachment that prevents her from receiving love. She has made herself into a person who can shoot lightning, and in doing so she has made herself into a person who cannot be loved, because the detachment that the one requires is the same detachment that forecloses the other. Zuko, notably, cannot generate lightning. He can only redirect it, and the show is explicit about why. Zuko has too much feeling. He is too attached to things. He wants things too much. He loves his uncle, loves Mai, eventually loves his friends. These attachments mean he cannot achieve the detachment that lightning requires. And the show is telling you, through this technical difference, that Zuko's inability to generate lightning is actually a sign of his psychological health. He is attached. He is human. He feels things. His fire, therefore, is the normal kind of fire, the kind that comes from being alive. His inability to generate lightning is a mark of his humanity. Azula's ability to generate lightning is, by the same logic, a mark of what has been taken from her. She is so detached that she can produce the cold fire. She has purchased the lightning at the price of her capacity to love and be loved. And she did not, at the time of the purchase, understand what she was trading. She thought she was just getting better at firebending. She did not know that she was trading away her ability to be a person. By the time she understands the trade, it is too late. She is already the kind of person who generates lightning. She is already the kind of person who cannot receive the love her mother might have been offering. The trade is done, and she cannot unmake it. This is one of the show's subtlest arguments about the nature of excellence. That extreme excellence, in certain domains, comes at extreme cost. That the people we admire for their competence have often paid for that competence in ways we cannot see. That the surgeon who saves lives at record rates may have sacrificed her emotional life to do so. That the athlete who breaks records may have lost the ability to enjoy his body in unstructured ways. That the general who wins wars may have burned out the part of himself that can love a child. That excellence is not free. And that the people we call prodigies are often prodigies because they have traded away the parts of themselves that would have made them ordinary, and ordinary might have been the better trade. Azula did not choose to be a prodigy. She was made one. But the show is still asking you to consider what prodigy costs, and whether the cost is worth what is gained. In Azula's case, the cost was her sanity. She was the most powerful firebender of her generation, and she was destroyed by the state that the power required her to maintain. Was it worth it? The show does not answer, but it shows you the bill, and it shows you the bill in full, and you can draw your own conclusions. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us also talk about Azula's relationship with her mother in more detail, because the show uses Ursa as the structural absence around which Azula's psychology is organised. Ursa is gone for the entirety of the show's main timeline. She disappeared on the night Azulon, Zuko, and Azula's grandfather died. The circumstances of her disappearance are dark. In the comics, the eventual explanation is that Azulon ordered Ozai to kill Zuko, and Ursa, hearing this, offered Ozai a plan to kill Azulon instead, in exchange for Ozai sparing Zuko. Ozai accepted. Ursa provided the poison. Ozai used it. Ursa was exiled for her role. The exile was, from Ozai's perspective, a reward. He could have had her killed. He let her live, in a new identity, in a distant town. But Azula, as a child, did not know any of this. She just knew that one morning, her mother was gone, and her father would not explain where she had gone. Nobody would explain. The household moved on. The Fire Nation moved on. Ursa became, in Azula's mind, a spectre, a woman who had left her, a woman who had not said goodbye, a woman who had chosen to go, or had been taken, or had died, and about whom nothing was known for certain. Think about what this does to a child. A child who believes her mother did not love her already is destabilized. A child whose mother disappears without explanation is doubly destabilized. Azula cannot confront her mother to ask what she really thought. She cannot see her mother again to receive whatever correction her mother might have offered about the early patterns of her upbringing. The narrative Azula has constructed about her childhood is locked in, because the person who could contradict it is not available to contradict it. She is gone, and Azula, carrying the narrative that her mother thought she was a monster, has to live with it for the rest of her formative years. The disappearance also functions as a kind of confirmation in Azula's psyche of the original narrative. A mother who loved her would not have disappeared, Azula reasons. not realizing that the disappearance was not voluntary. A mother who cared about her would have found a way to communicate. The absence, in Azula's interpretation, is evidence that the original assessment was correct. Her mother thought she was a monster, so her mother left. The fact that there were complicated political circumstances surrounding the departure is invisible to Azula. She sees only the absence, and the absence for her is an answer. The hallucination in the mirror, in the final season, is the return of this repressed material. When Azula is under extreme psychological stress, her mind produces the image of her mother. And the image says something that Azula has been refusing to consider for years. That her mother loved her. That her mother did not think she was a monster. That whatever Azula has believed about her childhood may have been wrong. The image is, in effect, the possibility of correction. The possibility that the narrative Azula has been living by could be revised. Azula shatters the mirror because she cannot accept the possibility. Accepting it would require her to revise her entire life. Everything she has done, every choice she has made, every way she has configured herself, has been downstream of her belief that her mother did not love her. If that belief is wrong, she has nothing to stand on. The lightning she shoots, the commands she gives, the strategies she deploys, all of it has been built on the assumption that love was not available and power was. If love was available all along, then power was not necessary. She did not have to become what she became. She could have been something else. This is unbearable. So she shatters the mirror, and by shattering it, she keeps herself trapped inside the original narrative. She refuses the correction. She chooses to stay as she is. And this refusal is, in its own way, a choice. One of the few choices in her life that is actually hers. She has been made by her father. She has been shaped by her mother's absence. She has been conditioned by the Fire Nation. But in this single moment, she chooses. She chooses to stay inside the frame she has built. Even though the choice is going to destroy her. Even though the alternative is to accept love. She chooses the destruction. Because the alternative would require her to admit that her entire life has been a mistake. This is a very dark moment. It is one of the darkest moments the show produces. Because it is showing you a child, already broken, who is given one last chance to be saved, and who rejects the chance, not out of malice, out of the inability to imagine a life in which the original narrative was false. She has been living in the narrative for too long. She cannot imagine life outside of it, and the shattering of the mirror is her confirmation that she will die. Whether physically or psychologically, inside the narrative she has made her home. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The show does not give Azula a redemption arc. This is a deliberate choice. And it is, I think, the right one. Because not every person gets redeemed. Some people are too broken, too early, too thoroughly, to be repaired within the time they have been given. And a children's show that wants to be honest about the world has to acknowledge this, has to show that some children cannot be saved, that the damage sometimes is too deep, that the intervention that might have helped is no longer available, or is refused when offered, or comes too late. This is a hard truth. But it is a true truth, and the show is brave enough to show it. Azula ends the show screaming on the ground. She does not get a coronation. She does not get a romantic partner. She does not get a quiet tea shop with a beloved mentor. She gets a cell in a mental institution, which the show does not show us, but which the subsequent comics establish. She gets, in the best case, years of slow, partial recovery, the kind that never fully reverses what was done to her in childhood. She gets, at best, a muted version of a life. She does not get back to what she could have been if her upbringing had been different. That person does not exist anymore. That person never got a chance to exist in the first place. This is, in a way, the cost of the war. The war killed thousands of people, but it also damaged children who survived. Azula is one of them. The damage to her was not physical, in the primary sense. The damage was in what the war's ideology did to the families that bought into it. Ozai, the Fire Nation's most committed imperialist, produced Azula in part because his imperialism required a daughter who could serve as his instrument. The ideology shaped the parenting, which shaped the child, and the child became the character we meet in the show. The war's damage is not only in the burned villages, it is also in the broken children inside the Fire Nation's own palace. This is a point the show is making about war in general. War is not only the death count. War is also the slow deformation of the cultures that wage it. The children of a militarized society are shaped by the society's values, and those values over a century of war are values that produce Azulas. Not exactly Azulas. Variants, but in the same family. Children who have been taught that worth is performance. Children who have been taught that love is conditional. Children who have been taught that weakness is shameful. Children who have been taught that the only safe relationship to other people is through dominance. 100 years of Fire Nation warfare produced, among other things, a generation of Fire Nation aristocrats who could not love their own children properly. And Azula is the logical endpoint of that pattern. When the war ends, the damage to Azula cannot be undone by the end of the war. The damage is in her psyche. It will not fade with a new political order. Zuko, as Fire Lord, will have to deal with a nation full of Azula-like wounds, most of them less extreme than hers, but all of them present. He will have to build a culture that can heal rather than reinforce these kinds of wounds. And this will take generations. The Fire Nation cannot become a healthy society overnight. It will take Zuko's entire reign, and the reigns of his successors, to slowly rewire the national psychology. And even then, there will be residual damage. There will be people who did not survive the transition. Azula is one of them. She is a casualty of the war, even though she never went to a battlefield. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us end on the specific scene that is, I think, the most important image the show ever produces of Azula. It is the scene in the 3rd season episode called The Beach, where the 4 Fire Nation teenagers are around a bonfire, taking turns saying what has been bothering them. We have mentioned this scene already, but I want to return to it, because it is the purest portrait of Azula the show produces. When it is her turn, Azula delivers her mother line with a bitter laugh. She says her mother thought she was a monster. She says her mother was right. She laughs, and the laugh is the entire point, because the laugh is false. The laugh is the performance of having processed something that has obviously not been processed. The laugh is Azula telling the group and telling herself that this wound does not bother her anymore, that she has moved past it, that she has made peace with it, but the entire framing of the laugh tells you that she has not. Because a person who has actually made peace with a childhood wound does not need to laugh about it. They can speak of it plainly. They can name it. They can describe it. They can talk about it without the defensive mechanism of humour. Azula cannot. Azula can only say the words through the shield of the laugh, because without the shield, the words would break her. They would reveal that the wound is still open, that she has been carrying it, bleeding for years, that the laugh is a way of keeping the bleeding invisible. And the show is asking you to see this, to see that the apparent resilience of this character is actually a sign of how deep the wound is, that the fact that she can joke about her mother's rejection is not a sign of health, but a sign of how fully she has adapted to the injury, that the adaptation is the damage, that if she had been less broken, she would have been more visibly broken, that her composure is a symptom, not a strength. This is a very sophisticated observation about trauma. It is the observation that trauma often looks on the surface like strength, that the people who seem to have moved past a difficult history are often the people who have not moved past it at all. That real processing of pain is often messy, involves tears and uncertainty, and long periods of feeling lost. That clean narratives of overcoming, delivered with confidence, are frequently the scripts people recite because they have not actually overcome anything. They have only learned to perform having overcome it. Azula's entire existence is this kind of performance. She performs competence. She performs detachment. She performs mastery. She performs the having processed of her childhood pain. And the performance is so complete, so consistent, so year after year reliable, that it is almost easy to mistake it for the real thing. The show, in the third season, pulls back the performance layer by layer until the child underneath is visible, and the child underneath is in pieces. If the show has one final argument about Azula's psychology, it is this: that what looks like strength is often, in fact, an elaborate defense. That the people around us who seem most invulnerable are often the most wounded. That our cultural assumption that visible emotion is weakness and invisible emotion is strength is exactly backwards. Real strength is the ability to acknowledge a wound. Pretended strength is the ability to hide it. And the show, by taking a character who is the very embodiment of pretended strength and showing you what is underneath, is inviting you to revise your assumptions about everyone you know. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. One more observation: the final screaming image of Azula in the show is paired visually and thematically with the hugging image of Zuko and Iroh in the tea shop. The two images are the show's parallel answers to the question of what happens to the two Fire Nation siblings. Zuko gets the hug, Azula gets the scream. Same family, same upbringing, in important respects, different outcomes. And the show is asking, without quite saying so, why the outcomes diverged. What did Zuko have that Azula did not? What was present for him that was absent for her? The answer is Iroh. Throughout this video, we have been returning to Iroh, because Iroh is the structural difference between the two siblings' paths. Zuko had an uncle who refused to give up on him. Azula did not. Or rather, Azula had the same uncle, potentially, but Azula was configured, by the time she was old enough to engage with him, in a way that made her unable to receive what he was offering. Iroh was never close to Azula the way he was to Zuko. The show implies that he tried, in earlier years, but that Azula had already rejected him as irrelevant by the time she was a child. She was too aligned with her father. She could not see the value of an uncle who did not offer her what her father offered. This is one of the deeper tragedies of the Fire Nation royal family. Iroh was available. He was a potential source of love and guidance for both of the children. Zuko, because of his own history of being burned by his father, was more open to what Iroh could offer. Azula, because of her history of being rewarded by her father, was closed to it. The same uncle, equally available to both children, had very different effects. Not because of anything he did differently, because of how each child received him. This is a sobering truth about the limits of external intervention. Even the best uncle, even the most loving presence, cannot save a child who is not willing to be saved. Iroh could not have redeemed Azula unless Azula had chosen to let him. And by the time Azula might have been ready to let him, she was already configured in ways that made her unable to recognize the offer. The window for her was narrow, and it had closed before she knew the window was even open. This is the final lesson of her arc. Redemption is possible, but it requires a specific kind of openness from the person being redeemed. The openness cannot be forced. It cannot be provided. It can only be cultivated over time by the person themselves, and usually only when they hit some kind of rock bottom that breaks their defenses enough to let the offered love through. Zuko hit his rock bottom in the second season finale, and the rock bottom broke him enough to let Iroh through in the third season. Azula hits her rock bottom at the end of the third season. But by then, there is no Iroh standing ready to catch her. He is in a cell. He is far away. And the rock bottom for her is not an opening to redemption, but a final collapse into the identity she has been building for her entire life. This is why she ends in chains screaming, rather than in a tea shop, hugging. Not because she was worse than Zuko, not because she deserved it more, because the timing of her breakdown did not coincide with the availability of her Redeemer. If she had broken down a year earlier, or a year later, with the uncle present and willing, she might have been caught. She was not. And so she fell. This is how lives go. This is how people are saved or not saved, by the specific intersection of readiness and availability, by whether the right person is present at the right moment, by luck in large part. And Azula had bad luck. Not bad luck in the sense of having been unlucky in general. She was born to wealth and power. Her bad luck was specifically in the timing of her breakdown, which happened when the person who might have caught her could not reach her. And the show, in showing us this, is reminding us that the people in our lives who have not been redeemed may not be beyond redemption. They may just have had bad luck. They may just have needed someone present that no one was present for them at the right moment. The possibility of redemption for them may still be there in some future moment if the right person can show up at the right time. This is a kinder way of reading villains, not as permanent moral failures but as people who missed a critical window. And the invitation, implicit in this reading, is for us to be the person who might be in the window for someone in our own lives. We cannot save everyone, but we can be available. We can show up. We can pour tea. We can hug. And if someone we know is in their breaking moment, and we happen to be present, and we happen to be able to offer what they need, then we might, in some small way, be the Iroh they did not have. Not every time, but sometimes. And sometimes is enough. That is Azula's psychology. That is what the show has been showing you across 3 seasons with increasing clarity, until the final image of her on the courtyard stones is a face you recognize as a person, not a villain, a broken person. A person who did not get the help she needed at the moment she needed it. A person whose life turned out the way it turned out because of forces she did not choose, pressures she did not understand. and one specific window of redemption that closed before she was ready to step through it. Let us return to several specific scenes that build Azula's character across the 2 seasons in which she is active, and give them more detailed attention. Because the arc of her psychological collapse is told, as most important arcs in this show are told, through small moments accumulated across many episodes, and the weight of the collapse, by the time we reach its final expression in the courtyard, is a weight that has been building quietly for the entire time we have known her. Consider her first major episode, The Avatar State, which aired on March 17th, 2006. Azula arrives at the Fire Nation outpost where Zuko and Iroh are being sheltered. She comes in a grand procession. She has hundreds of soldiers. She has ceremonial firebenders. She has full imperial pomp. She steps off the ship in white and gold robes, with her hair in a perfect top knot, with every element of her appearance coordinated for maximum intimidation. She is performing, from the first second, the identity of the Fire Nation princess she has been trained to be. And the performance is flawless. The show is telling you, through this entrance, that Azula is already at 14 operating at the highest level her training permits. She knows how to move. She knows how to speak. She knows how to handle ceremony. She has been, for her whole life, preparing for exactly this kind of moment. And the moment is arriving, and she is ready. But underneath the performance, the show also gives you clues. Watch her eyes during the ceremony. Watch how often they dart to her brother's face. She is not, in fact, as calm as the performance suggests. She is scanning. She is reading the room. She is looking for weaknesses. She is, at every moment, calculating. And the calculation is constant. It never stops. She cannot afford for it to stop. Because if she stops calculating, even for a second, she might notice that she is exhausted. And exhaustion, in her mind, is a form of failure she cannot allow herself to have. This is the first signal the show gives us about Azula's interior. She is calculating non-stop. She is never at rest. She has no mode of being other than on. And the onness, maintained at that intensity for years, is a kind of slow violence she is doing to her own body and mind. But she does not know this yet. She thinks she is winning. She thinks the performance is sustainable. She has not yet hit the moment when the machinery starts to fail. The trap she sets in that first episode is worth studying. She tells Zuko and Iroh that their father has reinstated them, that their honour has been restored, that they are invited home. She does this with perfect warmth. Her voice is kind. Her face is soft. She smiles at her uncle with genuine-looking affection. She offers her brother a hug, and all of it is a lie. All of it is performance. The actual goal is to get them onto her ship, where they can be captured and shipped home as prisoners. The fact that Azula can perform this kind of deception fluently tells you something specific about her. It tells you that she has been practicing deception for years, that she is comfortable with it, that she does not experience it as a moral violation. Most 14-year-olds, if asked to deceive their own family members, would hesitate. They would feel guilty. They would leak non-verbal signals of discomfort. Azula does not. She can deceive her family without any visible cost to herself, which means the show is telling you that the family bond she is pretending to have does not actually exist in a form she can damage. There is no bond to damage. So deception is just another tool. It has no moral weight for her, because the person being deceived is not a real person to her. Her brother is, functionally, a stranger she has to capture. Iroh sees through the deception almost immediately. He is a man who has spent his life reading people. He can feel, in his bones, that Azula is lying. He tells Zuko. Zuko wants to believe the lie. Because the lie contains the thing he has been working toward for 3 years, which is his father's approval. He hesitates. He argues. He wants to go with her. And it is only at the last moment, when the trap becomes undeniable, that Zuko accepts Iroh's reading and refuses to board Azula's ship. This moment, in the first episode of the second season, establishes a pattern that will recur. Zuko wants to believe Azula. Iroh warns him not to. Zuko hesitates. The situation escalates, and eventually Zuko is faced with the consequences of not having listened to his uncle. This pattern recurs throughout the show, and each time Zuko learns a little more to trust his uncle's reading of situations over his own desire to believe what his sister is telling him. The learning is slow, but it is happening. And by the end of the series, Zuko has fully absorbed the lesson. His sister lies, his uncle does not. When forced to choose, always trust the uncle. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The Chase, which aired on May 26, 2006, is another important Azula episode. Azula pursues the heroes across the Earth Kingdom on a vehicle called the Fire Nation Tundra Tank. The tank never stops. It does not need to refuel, or so the show implies. It does not need to rest. It moves continuously over any terrain at a consistent speed. And Azula, inside it, pursues the heroes with the same relentlessness. This is a small detail, easy to miss, but it carries weight. The tank's refusal to stop mirrors Azula's refusal to rest. She is not in this episode performing fatigue. She is not taking breaks. She is not eating. She is, for the entire episode, in pursuit mode, without variation. And the heroes trying to stay ahead of her are slowly being ground down by the fact that they have to sleep, and she does not. Sokka at one point says something like, "She is chasing us forever, how is she doing this?" And the show is telling you, through his confusion, that Azula's capacity for continuous effort is not normal. Even the heroes who have been through their own trials cannot maintain this pace, but Azula can. Because Azula has trained herself over years to remove the human needs that would otherwise slow her down, she has made herself into a machine, and the machine is, for now, functioning. But there are moments in the chase when you see a crack, when Azula, briefly, looks tired, when her face softens for a second before she catches herself, and when Iroh confronts her near the end of the episode. In the ruins of an abandoned town, Azula does something surprising. She shoots lightning at Iroh, and then when he redirects it, she uses the confusion to escape. The interaction is brief, but the lightning strike is notable, because generating lightning requires the kind of emotional detachment we discussed, and Azula, at this moment, is not emotionally detached. She is in fact rattled. Her tank has been stopped. The heroes have slipped away. Her plan has failed. She is angry, and yet she still manages to generate lightning. This tells us something specific about Azula's skill. She has, at 14, achieved a level of technical control over her bending that allows her to perform lightning even in emotionally compromised states. Most firebenders, including her father, require perfect calm to generate lightning. Azula does not. Azula can do it when she is furious. This is remarkable. And it is also, the show is hinting, a symptom of how unusually deep her emotional compartmentalization runs. She is fragmenting her emotions into isolated compartments so effectively that she can use parts of herself while locking away other parts. And the fragmentation, while useful for bending, is not good for her as a person. The parts of herself she is locking away do not stop existing. They build up pressure, and eventually the pressure will find a way out. Azula does not appear in every episode of the second season, but she appears enough that we can trace her trajectory. By the time we reach the crossroads of destiny, the two-part season finale from December 1st, 2006, she has captured Ba Sing Se. She has negotiated with the Dai Li. She has flipped the city's secret police to her side. She has, functionally, conquered the Earth Kingdom capital without firing a single shot. And her method is worth studying, because it tells you how her mind works. The Dai Li are a corrupt organisation. They are used to being in charge. They are used to being feared. Azula, understanding this, offers them what they want, which is continued power. She does not offer them Fire Nation ideology. She does not try to convert them. She simply promises that under her rule, they will remain the city's secret police. Their positions will be preserved. Their methods will be sanctioned. And the Dai Li, hearing this, flip immediately. They become her agents, and they help her take the city. This is a demonstration of Azula's strategic mind. She does not need to fight. She needs to understand what the other party wants and provide it. She is transactional to a degree most adults never achieve, let alone most 14-year-olds. And she is willing to work with corrupt institutions if working with them serves her goals. She does not have a naive vision of good governance. She has a cold vision of leverage, and she applies leverage expertly to take a city that has never fallen. This conquest is Azula's high point. It is the moment when her strategic abilities are most clearly demonstrated. And it is also the moment when, in a certain sense, her arc begins its downward turn. Because having achieved the highest strategic victory of her life, she discovers that the achievement does not produce the satisfaction she was expecting. She has captured the city. She has captured the Avatar. She has, by the show's standards, won. And winning does not fix her. She is still empty. The conquest was supposed to fill something. It does not. And she does not know what to do with the emptiness. The show does not spell this out. But watch Azula in the scenes immediately following the conquest. She is triumphant, yes, but there is a specific quality to her triumph that is not joy. It is more like the absence of defeat. She has, for the moment, not lost, but she has not won in the deep sense either. She does not seem to be experiencing pleasure. She is experiencing perhaps a temporary relief from the constant calculation. And the relief, small as it is what she has been chasing. She has been conquering cities in order to produce a moment when she does not have to be on. That moment has arrived, and the moment is hollow. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The third season opens with Azula still in her high-functioning mode. She returns to the Fire Nation as the hero of Ba Sing Se. She is celebrated. Her father praises her. She has, in every visible way, achieved the life she was being prepared for. And the show gives us, in the early third season episodes, a specific portrait of her behaving as if everything is fine. She plans strategy sessions. She advises her father. She makes jokes, the specific kind of Azula joke, which is a joke that has cruelty underneath the surface. She trains. She practices. She maintains at all moments the composure she has been maintaining for years. And the composure, from her perspective, evidence that the conquest was a success. She is back to baseline. She is functional. She is Azula. But the cracks we noted begin to appear. Small things. She sleeps slightly less well. She spends more time in her quarters. She has, in several scenes, moments when her face goes blank, and she seems to be looking at something internal rather than external. The show is tracking the internal erosion without calling attention to it. We see it, but the other characters do not. And Azula herself does not either. She is busy being Azula. She does not have time to notice that she is breaking down. The Beach, which aired on October the 19th, 2007, provides our closest look at Azula out of her working context. The 4 Fire Nation teenagers are sent on a forced vacation, and Azula, without the usual structures that organise her day, starts to visibly struggle. She does not know how to be on vacation. She does not know how to be informal. She does not know how to flirt with a boy at a party. She tries and she fails, and the failure reveals something important about her. The scene where she tries to flirt is, in a certain sense, the saddest scene the show gives her. She has read, somewhere, how flirting is supposed to work. She has memorised phrases. She knows the moves, and she executes them. But the execution has no soul behind it. She does not actually know why any of the phrases are supposed to work. She does not understand the emotional mechanics of attraction. She is reciting from a script she does not understand. And the boy she is flirting with, a normal Fire Nation teenager, recognizes immediately that something is off. He is polite. He makes his excuses. He leaves. Azula, watching him leave, is briefly devastated. You can see it. Her face collapses for a fraction of a second. And then she reorganizes. She blames the boy. She calls him stupid. She walks away. But the reorganization does not heal the damage. The damage is there now. She has been rejected for the first time in her life by someone she was trying to charm. And rejection is not an experience her psyche has any tools for handling. So she compartmentalizes it. She puts it in the box with everything else she cannot feel. And the box by this point is nearly full. The bonfire scene, which we have already discussed, happens later that same episode. And her monster line, delivered with the bitter laugh, is the first time Azula has articulated the wound at the centre of her life to anyone, even her closest friends. The articulation happens in a specific context. The others have just shared their own wounds. Zuko has said he hates himself. Mai has said her parents treated her like an object. Ty Lee has said she was one of 7 identical sisters who was never seen. And Azula, in the rhythm of the sharing, offers her wound too. But notice how she offers it. She does not say, "I am sad." She does not say, "This hurts me." She says, in effect, "My mother thought I was a monster, and she was right." The framing is crucial. Azula does not actually claim to be hurt by her mother's assessment. She agrees with it. She presents the agreement as a kind of dark humour, and the others, hearing this, do not know how to respond. Because the statement is not asking for comfort. It is asking to be validated as true, and validation is not a thing any of the others can offer. Ty Lee tries to deflect. Mai does not speak. Zuko looks at the ground. The moment passes, and Azula, having said the thing, never says it again. But the audience carries the line forward. We know now what she has been carrying, and we know by her self-agreement with her mother's assessment that she cannot be reached through normal channels. She has already internalized her mother's judgment so deeply that she considers it an accurate description of herself. She cannot be talked out of it. The judgment is her. This is why the intervention that would have to happen to save her if such an intervention were possible, would have to be so elaborate. It is not enough to tell Azula that her mother was wrong. She would not believe it. It is not enough to offer her love. She would not trust it. The only thing that could reach her, hypothetically, would be an experience so powerful that it bypassed her cognitive defenses. A specific scene, a specific moment, a specific gesture that her mind could not compartmentalize into the existing boxes. And the show, by the time we get to the final season, has no one who can provide such a gesture to her. Iroh is imprisoned. Zuko has defected. Her father is distant. Her friends have betrayed her. The people who might have reached her are all, for specific reasons, unavailable. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The Boiling Rock, Part 2, which aired on July 16, 2008, is when the first major external blow lands. Mai and Ty Lee betray her. We have already discussed this scene, but let us return to the specific aftermath. Azula returns to the Fire Nation capital without them. Her father does not know yet. Her plan, on the return journey, is to reorganize, to pretend the betrayal did not happen, to absorb the loss and continue. She is, even in this moment of real damage, still trying to function, still performing, still on. But the performance from this point on is visibly fraying. The show gives us scene after scene in which her composure slips. She snaps at servants, she shouts at guards. She has in one scene an extended solo moment in which she is pacing her quarters and muttering to herself. The camera holds on her alone, in this moment. And what we see is not the confident princess we have known. What we see is a young woman fighting a losing battle against her own mind. She is trying to think. She is trying to plan. And the thinking is not working because the foundation it has been built on is collapsing. The loss of Mai and Ty Lee means, for Azula, the loss of the two people she had classified as loyal. The classification was wrong. She believed she had them. She did not. And this discovery, small as it might seem from the outside, is philosophically catastrophic for her. Because if she was wrong about Mai and Ty Lee, she might be wrong about everything. Her classifications are her tools. Her tools are how she navigates the world. If the tools are broken, she cannot navigate. And she has nothing else to work with. She has never developed alternative ways of relating to people. She has only ever had the classifications. The paranoia begins in this period. Small at first, she starts to suspect servants of plotting against her. She starts to see plots in casual comments. She starts to reorganize her household based on perceived loyalties that nobody has actually expressed. And the reorganization escalates. She banishes servants. She banishes guards. She banishes, eventually, the governors and advisors who have been loyal to her family for decades. The banishing is wild. It is not strategic. It is the action of someone whose threat detection system has gone haywire. By the time the comet approaches, Azula is functionally alone in the palace. She has pushed out almost everyone who could have supported her. She has no friends. She has no servants she trusts. She has no advisors. She has only her own increasingly unreliable judgment. And her father, the one person whose opinion still matters to her, is about to leave her behind. The coronation scene, where Ozai names himself Phoenix King and leaves Azula as a technically Fire Lord who is actually a caretaker, is the moment that finishes her. We have discussed the scene, but consider the specific psychological content. Azula has been preparing her whole life for the moment When her father acknowledges her as the heir, the moment arrives, and it turns out to be a sidelining. The throne is hers in name only. The real power has been taken by her father, who is renaming himself above the Fire Lord tier. And Azula, hearing this, understands that her father has never actually intended for her to inherit anything that matters. She has been a useful instrument for him, not a daughter, not a successor, an instrument. And the instrument today is being set aside because he does not need it for the task he has in mind. Azula does not protest. She bows. She accepts the consolation title. But the performance in this moment is visible as performance. Her face is too still. Her posture is too rigid. Her voice is too controlled. She is no longer operating from some deep reserve of confidence. She is operating from raw will. And raw will, maintained without the support of actual psychological substrate, is not sustainable. It is the condition of a person who is seconds away from collapse, holding themselves up by pure refusal to fall. After the coronation, Azula withdraws to her quarters. She does not eat. She does not sleep. She spends hours staring at her reflection. She begins in private to cut her own hair. This last detail is important because in Fire Nation culture, a person's top knot is tied to their honour. To cut one's own hair is to declare oneself dishonoured. It is a ritual act of shame, and Azula, performing this act on herself, is telling us, without words, that she has realised her whole life has been a lie. The honour she was pursuing does not exist. The structure she was operating inside has collapsed, and she is, in cutting her hair, acknowledging the collapse the only way her culture gives her to acknowledge it. But she is not doing it formally. She is doing it badly. She is hacking. The hair is uneven, the style is wrong, and the badness of the self-cutting is itself a statement. She is not in control. She is no longer able to perform even the ritual of self-dishonour correctly. She is falling apart in public, through the medium of her own appearance, and the palace, which might have intervened in a different kind of family, lets her fall. Nobody stops her. Nobody sits with her. Nobody tries to heal her, because there is nobody left in her life who would know how to. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The mirror scene we have discussed. Let us sit with it one more time, because it is the most important single scene in Azula's arc, and it compresses her whole psychology into a few minutes of screen time. Azula is in front of the mirror. She is brushing her hair, or trying to. The brushing is not working. The hair is unevenly cut. The brush catches and pulls. She is frustrated. She is alone. And in her reflection, she begins to see her mother. Ursa, in the reflection, speaks. She says she loves her daughter. She says she is proud of her. She says she has always been proud of her. She says, in effect, everything Azula has been refusing to let herself believe for her entire life. The mother she remembers as the mother who thought she was a monster is, in the reflection, saying the opposite. And Azula, confronted with this, cannot accept it. Because accepting it would mean that her whole life has been a mistake, that the self she has constructed was built on a misreading, that she has been compensating for a rejection that was not perhaps as total as she believed. And if she accepts this, everything she has done, everything she has become, falls apart. She does not have another self to fall back on. This is the only self she has. So she throws the hairbrush. She shatters the mirror. She silences the voice. She chooses, in this moment, to keep believing the wound, because the wound is her foundation. If the wound is wrong, there is no foundation. And she cannot live without a foundation, so she keeps the wound. She destroys the evidence that it might be wrong, and she goes forward into the final battle as the wound. This is one of the most precise psychological portraits ever produced in animated television. The show is showing you in 5 minutes what it looks like when a person refuses a gift of healing, because the healing would require them to abandon the structure of their suffering. And the refusal is not a moral failure. It is not even really a choice. It is the action of a psyche that has built itself around a specific wound for so long that it no longer knows how to exist without that wound. The wound is not a thing Azula has. The wound is Azula, and Azula cannot become not Azula without ceasing to exist. So she chooses to continue being Azula, even though being Azula is killing her. There is a specific kind of tragedy in this scene. It is the tragedy of self-imposed limitation. Azula had, in this moment, an opportunity to change. The vision in the mirror was a door she could have walked through. Instead, she smashed the door. She sealed herself back into the prison she had built, and the sealing is final. After this moment, Azula will never again be offered this specific opportunity. The mirror will not return. Her mother will not appear again. The moment has passed, and Azula has chosen to remain who she has always been, even though the choice is, at this point, the choice to continue falling apart. The audience watching this scene is asked to hold something complicated. We are asked to understand that Azula is acting in accordance with her nature, shaped as that nature has been. We are asked to understand that she is not simply being evil, she is being a specific kind of broken. And we are asked to feel, underneath our judgment of her actions, a specific kind of grief. Because a child has just been offered a chance to heal and has declined it, and will now suffer the consequences of the declining. And the suffering is real, it is not fictional in its emotional weight. It is the suffering of a specific configuration of a human psyche that has, through no fault of its own, been trapped by the conditions of its making. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us consider how Azula functions as a foil to Zuko, because the show pairs them deliberately, and their pairing illuminates both. Zuko and Azula share almost the same set of initial conditions. They have the same father. They had for most of their shared childhood the same mother. They were raised in the same palace. They were trained by the same tutors. They were exposed to the same Fire Nation ideology. They grew up in the same war at the same time, with the same access to resources. By any structural analysis, their lives should have unfolded similarly. They did not. Zuko ended in a tea shop, hugging his uncle. Azula ended on the ground screaming. The difference is not in their inputs, the difference is in what each of them did with the inputs. And the show is, by pairing them, asking you to consider what caused the divergence. Several factors are relevant. First, Ozai preferred Azula. This is made clear repeatedly throughout the show. Azula was the favourite. Zuko was the disappointment. And this difference in parental treatment is, paradoxically, what eventually saves Zuko and destroys Azula. Because Zuko, being disfavoured, was forced to look for love elsewhere. He found it in his uncle. He found it eventually in his friends. He built through necessity a support structure outside his father's approval. And when the support structure became strong enough, he was able to reject his father's approval without ceasing to exist. Azula, being favoured, never had to look for love elsewhere. Her father's approval was a complete source of emotional sustenance for her. She did not need Iroh. She did not need friends. She did not need anything outside the palace's hierarchy. And because she did not need, she did not build. And when the palace's hierarchy fell apart, she had nothing to fall back on. The favouring, which seemed like a blessing, was actually the specific condition that prevented her from developing the alternate structures that might have saved her. This is a difficult moral for the show to communicate. It is telling you that being your parents' favourite can be its own kind of disaster. That the children who are loved conditionally by their parents, if they are loved at all, sometimes end up better off than the children who are loved unconditionally by those same parents, because the conditional love forces adaptation. The children who are given too much of a certain kind of love do not develop the capacity to seek other kinds of love, and when the first kind runs out, they have nothing. Zuko benefited from his father's cruelty in this specific sense. The cruelty forced him out. The cruelty pushed him into contact with Iroh, with the Earth Kingdom, with Jin, with the people who eventually became his friends. The cruelty was the specific condition that produced his salvation. Without the cruelty, he would have stayed in the palace, and he might have become Azula. With the cruelty, he was ejected, and in the ejection, he found himself. Azula, spared the cruelty, was not ejected. She stayed. She absorbed. She became the perfect Fire Nation princess. And the perfect Fire Nation princess, as the show is telling you, is not a survivable configuration. The ideology that produces such a princess also destroys her. Ozai's favoritism was not love. It was the selection of a tool that would perform well under his specific regime. And the tool, having been selected, was used. And the using consumed her. Second, Azula did not have Iroh. Iroh tried, in the early years, to be a presence in her life. But by the time she was old enough to interact with him in meaningful ways, she had already classified him as useless. Because her father had classified him as useless. And Azula, whose entire worldview was organised around her father's judgments, accepted the classification. She treated Iroh with the contempt her father taught her to feel. She never gave him a chance. And Iroh, recognising that the door was closed, turned his attention fully to Zuko, where the door was still at least partially open. This is, again, a difficult thing to hear. It is telling you that the person who might have saved Azula was available. He was right there. But Azula, because of who she had been trained to be, could not access him. The gate was not locked from his side. It was locked from hers, and she did not have the key, and she did not know she needed one. So the possibility of salvation, available in principle, was foreclosed in practice. And the foreclosure was her own doing, even though she was not aware of it, and even though she was operating under pressures she did not choose. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Azula did not have a moment of forced dislocation. Zuko had his banishment. The banishment was traumatic, but it was also, in retrospect, the best thing that happened to him. It forced him out of the environment that had shaped him. It forced him into contact with alternative perspectives. It gave him years to think, away from his father, in the company of a man who loved him. Azula did not have this. She was never banished. She was never sent into exile. She was always kept inside the palace, inside the ideology, inside the closed loop of her training. And the closed loop, never broken, never permitted her to consider alternatives. She did not know there were alternatives. The possibility of a different life was not, for her, imaginable. It was not a thing she had vocabulary for. When her friends betrayed her, she experienced it as catastrophe rather than as opportunity, because she had no framework for understanding that her friends' choices might be rational responses to her own behaviour. They were, in her mind, simply traitors. The word traitor is one she has. The concepts of moral agency, of friends having their own values, of friends having limits to what they will tolerate, these were not concepts she had access to. So when the closed loop finally broke, in the last weeks of the war, it broke all at once. There was no gradual education, no slow release, no practice. The whole system collapsed in a single extended episode, and Azula, in the centre of the collapse, had no reserves to draw on. She could not adapt, because she had not practiced adaptation. She could not reach out for help, because she had never developed the capacity to reach out. She could only do what she had always done, harder and harder until the doing itself became the pathology. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us also think about Azula's specific relationship to her own body, because a detail in her third season arc is easy to miss but worth noting. Azula is not just mentally unwell by the end. She is physically deteriorating. She is not eating. She is not sleeping. Her skin is paler than in earlier seasons. Her eyes have dark circles. She has lost weight. The animators drawing her in the final episodes have changed her proportions subtly. She looks sick. This is deliberate. The show is telling you that psychological damage has physiological consequences, that Azula's mind is not separate from her body, and that as her mind breaks, her body reflects the breaking. And the reflection is not a stylistic flourish. It is a statement about what it means to be a person. The mind and body are one system. When the system fails in one area, it fails in all areas. Azula cannot maintain her psychological performance while starving her body. The body will eventually tell the truth about what the mind is doing. This is, again, a sophisticated argument for a children's show to make. The argument is that you cannot simply think your way through trauma. You cannot will your body to keep functioning indefinitely when your mind is falling apart. The body is, in a sense, the final witness. It reports the truth, slowly but reliably, about what has been happening internally. And Azula's body, in the last episodes, is reporting truths her mind is refusing to articulate. She is visibly ill. She is not okay. And nobody in her life is around to notice, because she has successfully isolated herself from everyone who might have noticed. The Agni Kai, staged as it is the final physical manifestation of this collapse. Azula fights with technical skill, but without the fluid confidence of her earlier appearances. She is tired. She is moving wrong. She is making mistakes. And the fight, from an external perspective, looks like the fight of a competent but exhausted opponent. Zuko, who has been watching her, understands. He is not trying to defeat her quickly. He is trying to wait her out, because he can see that she is running on fumes. He is not in a rush. When she goes for the lightning strike on Katara, she is making a desperate decision. She knows at some level that she cannot win the duel conventionally. She has calculated, in her still functioning strategic layer, that the only way to hurt Zuko enough to matter is to hurt someone he loves. And Katara is the person he loves. So Katara is the target. The strategic mind is still working, but the rest of Azula is no longer supporting it. She has lost the physical reserves to execute the lightning properly, and when the lightning is redirected onto Zuko, she cannot process what has happened in time to prevent Katara from winning the fight. Katara, watching Azula chained to the grate, does not gloat. Katara does not celebrate. Katara has, by this point in the series, developed enough compassion to recognize suffering when she sees it. And she sees it. She sees that Azula, in this moment, is not a villain but a child. And Katara, running to Zuko, does not look back. She does not need to. The fight is over. Azula is defeated. And defeated in this context means not physically conquered, but psychologically finished. There is nothing more for her to do, because the person she has been has stopped working. This is the end of Azula's arc in the animated series. She screams, she cries, she strains against the chains, and the show pulls back and leaves her there. The next scenes are about Zuko and Aang and the broader resolution of the war. Azula is a loose thread, and the show, with deliberate restraint, lets her remain a loose thread. Because some threads do not get tied up in a satisfying bow, some people remain broken, some tragedies do not convert into redemptions, and the show has earned the right, by now, to leave one of its characters in the state that her actual circumstances have produced. The post-series comics offer partial continuations. Azula escapes. She wanders. She rejoins her family briefly, and then disappears again. She is, for most of the comics, a figure at the edges of the story, sometimes helpful, sometimes dangerous, never fully integrated. She remains, in effect, what the show left her as, a child whose breaking did not reverse itself, a child whose recovery, if it happens, will happen slowly, over years, outside the frame of any single story. And the comics, respecting this, do not try to convert her too quickly. What the show has given us through Azula is a specific kind of cautionary document. It is not a document about villainy. It is a document about what happens when a child is raised to be a weapon. The document is precise, patient, and unflinching. And the document, absorbed by the young audience that watch the show, has shaped the way that audience thinks about people who behave in Azula-like ways in their own lives. The colleagues who cannot stop working, the friends who cannot tolerate vulnerability, the family members who weaponize everything they touch. The show has taught a generation to see these behaviors not as malice, but as symptoms. And seeing them as symptoms, the generation has learned, changes what you can do with them. You cannot, in most cases, fix them, but you can understand them. And understanding them, in a pinch, can prevent you from being injured by them, and can sometimes even make a small room available, at the edge of the relationship, where the symptomatic person might eventually begin to receive something other than what they have been receiving. You cannot guarantee the receiving, but you can leave the door open. That is what the show is asking you to do. Leave the door open, even for people like Azula. Because the doors being open is the only possibility such people have. And the possibility is not nothing. And the leaving is not about them. It is about who you want to be in the world. You want to be the kind of person who leaves doors open for people who cannot currently walk through them. Because some of them eventually will, and you will be glad you were ready. That is what Azula has taught us. That is what her psychology has given us. Not an example to follow, a warning to understand, and a specific compassion earned through the slow revelation of her interior that extends outward from her character to everyone in our real lives who is struggling with similar wounds. The show built this compassion carefully, across 3 seasons without rushing. And the compassion, now embedded in the show, propagates outward every time someone new watches. And the new watchers take it with them, into their own lives, and they use it, quietly, in moments nobody else sees. And the using is the show continuing its work, long after the credits rolled for the last time. There is one more dimension of Azula's psychology that deserves attention, and that is her intelligence. Because Azula is not simply capable or trained. Azula is, by any reasonable measure, one of the most intelligent characters in the show. Her strategic mind is faster than any other character's. Her reads of situations are more accurate than anyone else's, often including adults twice her age. Her ability to process multiple variables simultaneously and to arrive at optimal plans is remarkable. And her intelligence is, itself, part of the tragedy. Because intelligence, without emotional integration, produces a specific kind of damage. An intelligent person without emotional grounding cannot be reasoned with, because they can argue against any reasoning. They cannot be reached through logic because their logic is better than yours. They cannot be educated because they have already educated themselves. The usual tools we have for helping people out of bad patterns do not work on someone like Azula. She has already thought of everything you might say to her. She has already constructed counter-arguments. She is waiting, in fact, for you to try. This is why Iroh, even if he had been available to her, might not have been able to save her, because Iroh's methods depend on patience, on presence, on the slow accumulation of small moments of attention. These methods work on Zuko, who is emotionally present enough to receive them. They would not work on Azula, who is emotionally absent by design. Iroh could have sat across from her for years. She would have continued to classify him as irrelevant. The classification, once set, is not responsive to evidence. It is defensive. Intelligence used defensively is one of the specific pathologies the show is diagnosing through Azula. The show is telling you that being smart is not protective, that smart people can, in fact, do more damage to themselves than less smart people, because their intelligence allows them to sustain self-destructive patterns with greater efficiency. A less intelligent version of Azula would have made strategic errors that would have caused her reign to fail earlier, and those early failures might have forced her to reconsider. Azula does not make those errors. She executes her plans flawlessly, and the flawlessness lets her keep going, keep conquering, keep advancing, long past the point where a less capable person would have been forced to stop and take stock. The moment Azula finally does have to stop and take stock is the moment her friends betray her. That is the first failure she cannot immediately solve with strategy. She cannot outthink Mai's refusal. She cannot argue Ty Lee back into compliance. She is faced, for the first time in her life, with an outcome she has no tools for. And the lack of tools is not, as she initially assumes, a temporary problem to be solved through more intelligence. The lack of tools is a structural problem. She does not have the relevant tools because the relevant tools are emotional. And she does not have emotions in a usable form. They are all locked away. She has traded them for her intelligence. This is the final cost of Azula's configuration. She traded feeling for competence, and she was competent. The competence carried her to a position of extraordinary power, but when the crisis arrived that required feeling, she had no feelings to use. The trade, which had paid dividends for years, suddenly cost her everything, because the currency she no longer had was exactly the currency the moment required. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us think about what Azula's arc teaches us about parenting. Because the show is, underneath its political plot, making specific arguments about how families produce children and how the production shapes the children's futures. Ozai is a specific kind of parent. He is the father who loves his children as projects, not as people, as projects. Zuko is the failed project. Azula is the successful project. Both children are, to Ozai, instruments of his purposes, and the two children respond to this instrumentalization in opposite ways. Zuko, knowing he is failing as a project, eventually comes to resent his father. Azula, knowing she is succeeding, embraces her father. The embracing is what destroys her. Because to be a successful project, Azula has to continue being useful. She cannot relax, she cannot slow down. She cannot have interests that do not serve the project. She has to continue performing the functions that earn her father's approval. And the functions are narrow. They require specific behaviours: strength, ruthlessness, strategic thinking, lack of weakness. Azula has to be those things all the time, forever. Any deviation is failure. Any softening is weakness. And weakness in her father's eyes is unforgivable. This is the prison that favoritism can build. Favoritism, when it is conditional, is not love. It is a contract. And the child who has accepted the contract has agreed to be a particular kind of person in exchange for approval. The child cannot change who they are without breaching the contract. And the breach is punished. Sometimes the punishment is withdrawal of approval. Sometimes the punishment is active cruelty. In Azula's case, she has not tested the punishment mechanism because she has always fulfilled the contract. But she knows implicitly what would happen if she failed. She has watched her brother fail. She has seen what her father does to failures, and she has concluded, correctly, that failure is not survivable. So she never fails. The never failing is the destruction, because no human being can actually never fail. Eventually the pressures accumulate, and the failure arrives. And when it arrives, the child who is committed to never failing is not equipped to survive it. They do not have the emotional infrastructure to process failure. They have only the mechanism of contract fulfillment, which does not permit failure as a category. So the failure, when it comes, is experienced as existential catastrophe rather than as a normal part of being alive. And the catastrophe produces the collapse. Azula's father, in this analysis, has effectively set his daughter up to fail in the most total possible way, by giving her approval only conditionally on her perfection. He is guaranteed that the first imperfection will destroy her. The imperfection was always going to come. The question was only when. And Azula, by performing at a higher level than any child should reasonably be expected to perform, has delayed the imperfection for 14 years. But when it finally arrives, in the form of her friends betraying her, the full weight of the accumulated contract drops at once. This is, in a quiet way, the show's most damning indictment of the Fire Nation. Not that it wages war, not that it commits genocide, not that it conquers, but that it raises its own children this way. That even the children of the regime's elite are, in their specific psychological configurations, casualties of the regime's ideology. The war destroys the Fire Nation's enemies. The regime destroys the Fire Nation's own children. And the destruction of children is, in a certain sense, the deeper crime, because enemies can, potentially, recover from a war. Children raised this way often cannot recover from their childhood. The damage is too foundational, and the damage propagates, when the children become parents, into the next generation. Unless someone, somewhere, breaks the cycle, Zuko breaks the cycle. He ends the series with the chance to be a different kind of father than his own father was. He takes that chance in the comics with his own daughter. He raises her differently. He does not make her a project, he lets her be a person. And the Fire Nation in the generations after Zuko's reign slowly becomes a different kind of place, because the ideology that produced Azula is no longer in the throne. The throne now contains a man who decided, against the gravitational pull of his own upbringing, to do it differently. Azula, if she had children, might not be able to break the cycle. The comics do not give her children. The canonical timeline does not depict her as a mother, but if she did, the pattern would be extremely difficult for her to escape, because the pattern was installed in her too deeply. She would have to work against it, consciously, every day. And her own internal resources for the work might not be sufficient. She might repeat her father's errors, in her own way without being able to see that she was repeating them. The cycle, once started in a family, is very hard to stop. And Azula, unlike Zuko, did not have an Iroh to help her see the cycle for what it was. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Let us finally consider the final shot of Azula in the original series. Because the last image of a character is always a statement about how the show wants us to remember them. The last shot is close on her face. She is on the ground, chained to the grate. Her mascara has run. Her hair is in her face. Her mouth is open in a long, continuous scream. Her eyes are wide, and she is weeping while she screams. The two things are happening at the same time. The scream is rage. The tears are grief. And the face is unable to separate them because at this moment she is experiencing both at maximum intensity simultaneously. The camera holds. The moment does not end quickly. The show wants you to look at her, wants you to take her in, wants you to understand that this is what has happened. A 14-year-old girl is on the ground screaming and weeping in the courtyard of a palace, on the day her family's 100-year war ended. And nobody is going to comfort her. Her brother is injured and being healed by someone else. Her friends have already left her. Her father is somewhere else entirely, being defeated by a 12-year-old. Her uncle is in Ba Sing Se, liberating a city. Her mother has been missing for a decade, and she is alone, on the ground, screaming into the empty air. This image is the show's summation of her, and the show is honest about what it means. It means that the war had casualties on the inside as well as on the outside. It means that the regime's own children were broken by the regime's own priorities. It means that the villain, when unmasked, is sometimes not a monster, but a wounded child who has been pointed at other wounded children for her whole life. The mask does not reveal evil. The mask reveals another wound. The show does not moralize this moment. It does not tell you what to feel. It just holds on her face and lets you feel it. And what you feel if you have been watching carefully is grief. Grief for a person who was not, despite everything, beyond reach at the start of her life. Grief for the intervention that did not come. Grief for the mother who vanished. Grief for the uncle who could not be accessed. Grief for the brother who tried, in his limited way, to reach her, and who failed because her classification of him did not permit reaching. Grief for the father who actively made her worse. Grief for the friends who eventually did the only thing they could do, which was leave. Grief for a specific human life that was malformed by its specific conditions, and that is now reaping the consequences of the malformation in a way that cannot be undone. This grief is the show's final statement about her. It is, in its own way, an act of compassion, To grieve a villain at her moment of defeat is not typical in children's television. It is unusual. It trusts the audience to hold complexity. And the audience, by the time we reach this moment, has been trained across 3 seasons to hold exactly this kind of complexity. The show has prepared us, through its patient work on every character, to receive this last image of Azula not as the deserved punishment of a bad person, but as the tragic consequence of a specific set of circumstances that nobody involved fully chose. That is what the psychology of Azula, fully understood, is asking us to sit with. Not a judgment, a sadness. A specific, detailed sadness for a specific, detailed person whose life went wrong in specific, detailed ways. And the sadness, held carefully, becomes a kind of teaching about what we owe to the difficult people in our own lives, about what it means to see a person clearly, even a person who has hurt us, about how compassion does not require agreement, or approval, or the abandonment of our own boundaries. Compassion just requires us to see what happened to this person, to see why they became what they became, and to grieve even a little for the life they did not get to have. This is Azula's gift to us, paradoxically. Not a template for how to live, a template for how to look. And the looking, practiced enough, starts to reshape the looker. We become slowly more capable of seeing our own difficult people the way the show sees Azula. We become more capable of holding their brokenness alongside our own responses to them. We become, in small ways, better at being with them, even when we cannot fix them. And the becoming is the point. That is what the show was doing all along. Through her character, it was training us. And the training absorbed becomes a way of moving through the world that carries the show's wisdom forward into rooms the show will never enter. One last image to close this essay. Azula, at the start of the series, was not yet what she became. Somewhere, in the years before the show begins, there was a small girl in the Fire Nation Palace who laughed at her brother's jokes, who curled up next to her mother, who had not yet decided to close off the parts of herself that felt. That girl existed. She was real, and something happened to her, slowly, across the years that turned her into the Azula we meet. And that small girl, if you look for her in the face of the final screaming chained figure, is still there, under the makeup, under the rage, under the strategic intelligence. Somewhere inside the 14-year-old on the courtyard stones, the small girl is still there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be held, waiting for someone to tell her that she was, after all, loved. Nobody tells her. The moment closes, the show ends, and the small girl remains, inside the older girl, carried into whatever future the comics and the sequels will provide. The show has left her there, on purpose so that we, the audience, can carry her with us. And we do, for as long as we remember the show, and we remember the show for a long time. That is the psychology of Azula. That is what she was. That is what the show gave us through her. And that is what, every time we watch her, we are asked to hold. A small girl in an enormous palace who was loved wrong by the people who were supposed to love her right, and who spent her whole life paying for the error, and who at the end of the show was paying for it still, and who in the deepest sense the show can reach, deserved better than she got. That is the argument. That is the sadness. That is the teaching. And that is, for any viewer who has absorbed it, a truth that continues to operate inside us, whether we notice it or not, for the rest of our lives. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.